Introduction of bills. The member for South West Coast.
I move that I introduce a bill for the Act to amend the Emergency Management Act 2013 in relation to emergency risk management arrangements for the Port of Melbourne and for other purposes. The main provisions of the bill are as follows. The bill seeks to amend the definition of critical infrastructure in section 74B of the Emergency Management Act 2013 to include the Port of Melbourne, and the definition of a major critical infrastructure at section 74B to include the Port of Melbourne. The bill further seeks to amend section 74J2A of the Act to provide that the Victorian Register of Critical Infrastructure must contain the Port of Melbourne. In Victoria, the Minister for Ports or the Governor in Council decides whether or not to include or remove items from the Register of Critical Infrastructure. The Port of Melbourne is in reality the single most critical infrastructure asset for our state. This bill is much needed as the Port of Melbourne has seen major disruption due to cyber attack, industrial action and protests, with little action from the Allen Labor government. The bill is necessary because while the port may in fact be included in the Register of Critical Infrastructure, this information is difficult to obtain. More importantly, the port's inclusion on the register must not be left to the discretion of the minister or subject to an executive order. The bill that I introduce will ensure the Port of Melbourne's status as significant critical infrastructure is explicitly recognised in law. This bill is critical to amend the register to mandate the inclusion of the Port of Melbourne. Robust arrangements to protect the security and operation of the Port of Melbourne are vital, and there should be no possibility that the port could be removed from the register if, in fact, it is already included. The bill I introduce recognises that any disruption to the port, like we've seen in the last few months, affects every single Victorian to the tune of $4 a week per household increase to the cost of living per year. Recently, the Treasurer of Victoria stated that disruptions to the Port of Melbourne were nothing more than a minor inconvenience.
Order. Member for South West Coast. Introducing a bill is not an opportunity to go into the detail of the bill. It's a procedural debate about why the bill would be introduced. I'd ask you to stick to the procedural debate.
Thank you. This bill is important and it seeks to amend the register to ensure the government is always keenly attuned to the importance of the Port of Melbourne to Victoria's supply chain and economy, while also ensuring the appropriate action is taken to protect critical supplies passing through the port. This bill is critical as independent research demonstrates that the recent disruptions to the Port of Melbourne resulted in $84 million a week cost to the economy. Hence, much greater than a minor inconvenience. The criticality of this bill, which seeks to stress the vital importance of the Port of Melbourne, is clear in the view of—
Order. Member for Barwon South. Leader of the House, on a point of order. Member for South West Coast will resume her seat. Member for South West Coast will resume her seat. On a point of order, Leader of the House.
Speaker, the member on her feet, I think, is defying your ruling. As you have indicated, it's a narrow procedural debate and the member should constrain herself to talking about why this bill should be introduced on a day when we have a very full business program of government business that's already been agreed by this House.
Order. The member for South West Coast had not strayed from the procedural debate after I ruled, and I remind her that it is a procedural debate.
Frivolous points of order are unruled.
So the criticality of the bill, which seeks to stress the vital importance of the Port of Melbourne, is clear. In fact, during the recent industrial dispute, 100,000 containers at one point were sitting off the coast unable to be unloaded. Many of these containers held goods that are vital to manufacturing or critical to Victorians, for example, insulin. This bill I introduce will help ensure that this critical infrastructure is not held to ransom like it was by protesters in recent weeks. This bill is critical as Victoria Police were sadly not backed by the Allen Labor government during the recent disputes, were prevented from acting in a timely manner. In fact, nowhere else in the world is so bereft of laws, such as the Move On laws, that are needed to support the police. The urgency of this bill is clear, as Victoria is dependent on imports and exports. In fact, there's only 12 days of fuel available in this country, so any disruption to the Port of Melbourne is much greater than just a minor inconvenience. This bill is needed as it will ensure the Port of Melbourne has the status it needs. The bill is urgent as the Allen Labor government must recognise how fragile the supply chain and logistics industries are. Clearly, the Premier and her ministers are ignorant of this important fact. In summing up, The Port of Melbourne needs to be added to the Victorian Register of Critical Infrastructure. This bill is much needed. If the port is already listed as critical infrastructure on the register, the Allen Labor government must explain their complete lack of action during recent disruptions. Victorian households and businesses suffered immensely during these disruptions, and the Allen Labor government should act and decide whether they can act, and they should be deeply ashamed. Due to incoming vessels, further process action at the Port of Melbourne is likely from tonight onwards. The Allen Labor government needs to act today.